What's up, guys? We're back with another episode of the Titans Time podcast. I am your host, Tanner Staggs. Joining me, as always, my co-host, Tyler Staggs. And Tyler, it's a good time to be a Titans fan right now, is it not?
It is a very good time to be a Titans fan. 5-0. 5-0. Hasn't happened since what, 2008? Is that right?
2008.
And man, it just you think about all the bad years that we've had. Um, Even last year, at this time we were sitting at 2-4, and now look at us. We have one of the best offenses in the league. Not really going to talk about our defense too much right here. Yeah, but our
Our
offense is
offense is
clicking
making up
on.
for it. They're making up for
Yeah,
it.
they're clicking on all cylinders, and Ryan Tannehill is leading the league right now in game-winning drive. I lost my train of thought there a minute. He's done it in 4 or 5 games, and the only game he didn't have to do it in was when we whooped up on the Bills. So, that may be something we end up seeing again this week, but we'll hop into that a little bit later. I believe, well, we need to talk about who we got coming to town this week, and that is
Pittsburgh
the Pittsburgh
Steelers.
Steelers. They're 5-0 as well, and maybe still a little unhappy that they didn't get to play us in week 4, but it
They're
is
just going
what
to
it
have
is,
to
and
get
we're
over it,
both.
though.
Well, here's the thing: we're both teams are still undefeated, and that was kind of one of the big things going into that week 4 matchup was both teams were undefeated, and we were going to get to see that clash of two teams that are top of the AFC. Last week the Titans were the number 1 seed in the AFC at the time. Well, now the Steelers have taken over that spot. I got to looking today and found that out because of they edged them out because of something with the scoring. But I mean, you're talking about a matchup of some heavyweight AFC teams here, and I'm looking forward to it. And I believe you have the injury report for. I know at least the Titans. What about the Steelers?
I do not have the Steelers right now, but first, before I do get into the Titans injury report, I do want to mention that as far as Week 7 matchups between undefeated teams go, this in Week 7 now, Week 7 and past then, because it has happened once in Week 8 and once in Week 9, but only in Week 7. Week 7 matchups between two undefeated teams have only happened twice in NFL history. Mike Vrabel was a part of one of those games once in 2004 with the New England Patriots. They won that game. So he's actually been a part of another one. I believe it may have been the Week 8 one, but he won that one as well. But in the Week 7 games, there have only been 2, and in both matchups, the home team has won. And so that's good news for the Titans this week, considering the game is at Nissan Stadium.
And to extend on that a little bit, just you mentioned that there were 2 games past Week 7, and so you're talking about so far 4 games total have happened Week 7 or later, where 2 undefeated teams have faced each other, and all 4 times the winner of that game has made it to the Super Bowl, and 2 of those times that team won the Super Bowl. Which, granted, we're getting close to the halfway point of the season. So these teams are in good position right now, being undefeated, to at least make the playoffs. And, they're the top 2 teams in the AFC. So obviously, looking at numbers and everything, like their chances are going to be higher to make the Super Bowl right now. So it's not like it's just that or that crazy in this small sample size of 4 games that the team that won it made the Super Bowl, because they were already set up in good position. But it's still a interesting stat to throw out there, and something that we can see if it comes true again this year.
Right. And if say like in years past, if you have in week 3 or even week 4, two teams that are 2-0 or 3-0 playing against each other, that's definitely not uncommon. But if you get to this point in the season and you have two teams that have not lost, I mean, you're looking at two teams that, I mean, at this point, if they're still undefeated, are probably two of the best in the NFL right now. And so, I mean, and then whoever wins, obviously, most of the time is the better of those two teams. So, like you said, it's no shock that in this small sample size, the winner does go to the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl. Um, but I just want to say, and I mean, I don't know, it may be too early in the season to say this, but I feel like whoever wins this game, that is just gives them a huge advantage as far as being that one team that does get home field advantage in the playoffs.
It it could be very big for whichever team wins this game. Like you said, it could be like whichever team wins this could very well be the team that gets the home field advantage throughout the playoffs. But yeah, another thing is this may not be the only time these teams meet this year. Like there's a good chance we could see this matchup again in the playoffs. As
Right.
long as nothing crazy happens to the Titans or the Steelers, like this is a legit, possible rematch in the playoffs, kind of like Kansas City and the Titans last year. We faced them in the season, then met them again in the playoffs. Obviously, had two different outcomes, but you never know. Um, another thing I want to throw out there before we get back to the injury report is since the Titans uh, became the Titans, like we're no longer the Houston Oilers,
Right.
they lead the head-to-head matchup against the Steelers 13-9. With that being said, though, since Big Ben has took over the quarterback position for the Steelers lead the head-to-head matchups 6-3. So, this is these have always I've always felt like this is a good rivalry game outside of the AFC South for us. And of course, I think they both used to be in like the AFC Central or something like that. So, they even back then for sure,
I'm too young to know
this
about
was
any of those different conferences. So I have no idea about that. But I think that the Steelers and Titans are a pretty good rivalry too, outside of the AFC South. And honestly, for some reason, just those AFC, let's see, it's left my mind for a moment. AFC North, is that right?
for the Steelers.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Honestly, just with those, a lot of those AFC North teams in general. I mean, the Ravens, the Steelers, even the Browns. I feel like all of those are, in my mind, rivalries for the Titans.
Yeah, I'll definitely go with the Ravens and the Steelers. The Browns, that one's kind of a toss up for me on if I'd count it as a rivalry game, but for sure the Ravens and the Steelers, I would go with. So we've been talking about it, got off track. Let's get back to the injury report for the Titans.
We're like the one of the best at getting off track. But I'll try to keep us from getting off track again. On Thursday, AJ Brown and Isaiah Wilson were both non-participants in practice, but Clowney and Michael Pruitt, who both missed practice on Wednesday, were full participants. Jonnu Smith, Dennis Kelly, and Daquan Jones, who were limited on Wednesday, were all full participants as well. And that's all we got.
All right, I looked up the Steelers injury report. David DeCastro, he's a guard for the Steelers.
A very good guard.
He did not practice. He was out with an abdomen injury. Deontay Johnson, wide receiver, out with a back injury. Those were the only two that did not practice for the Steelers. Other people that were back at practice for them was Marcus Allen, Eric Ebron, Marquise Pouncey, Big Ben, Juju Stephen Tuitt, Derek Watt, and TJ Watt. All of those guys were back, full participants in practice today. So while the list did look a little bit longer, there were a lot of these guys that were back at practice.
Right. And then as far as people that are not going to show up on the injury report, Devin Bush, one of the Steelers, probably their best linebacker. I would definitely put him there.
Well, their
he's on
signal
IR.
caller.
Yeah, that as well. He is on IR, so he's not going to show up there on the injury report. And for the Titans, Adoree Jackson could potentially be ready to play this week.
That would be big for us. Like you said, he's designated to come off IR. He's been practicing with the team, but will we see him this week? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a toss up. It would be great to have him back.
I would like to have him for this game.
Right, but there's just no way to know. But we could definitely, definitely benefit from having him in this game, especially if Juju's going to play.
Well, just all the weapons that the Steelers have on the offensive side of the ball. Like, we need Adoree back, even if it's just simply for his speed. Like right now, our two corners of Butler and Jonathan Joseph, like you're talking about older cornerbacks that don't have the speed that they used to or the quickness. And they have the veteran presence, but if we keep matching them up against these speed guys, they're going to get beat a lot. And I'm not necessarily going to say every time because, obviously being veterans, they know ways to adapt and can make some plays. But look at what Will Fuller done against us. He had a really good game and burned us for a long touchdown last week. And like I said, the Steelers have some weapons that if we're not careful, they can get down the field on us and make some plays.
Sorry, I kind of lost track there for a minute because since we're having to do this over Zoom, sometimes your audio will get a little bit behind, and then it'll try to catch up, and so it'll make it say it really fast. It's just kind of funny, but yeah, they do have a lot of good weapons, and one guy that I am kind of honestly afraid might really go off against the Titans is Chase Claypool. Justin Jefferson had his big game against the Titans. Another rookie receiver there, and Chase Claypool. He's been playing well, and he's a good weapon for the Steelers. So got to watch out for him.
He is. The Steelers have done a good job over the 5 games that they played of really spreading the ball around. And Claypool, though, the past couple of weeks has kind of become their go-to guy. I don't think he was, the most targeted guy for the Steelers this past week, but he was the guy that made the most out of his targets. And he's a big body receiver, and he's a playmaker when he gets the ball in his hands.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. He's a playmaker. And a couple weeks ago, he had 4 touchdowns, I believe, against the Eagles. And he wasn't just doing it on the receiving end. He was doing it on some, the wide receiver around coming and getting the ball. And, they're going to have to keep tabs on him. And I don't know who they're planning to put on him. Maybe the Titans put Fulton on him, just as because of his speed. That could help. But, we'll just have to see on if we get Adoree back for this game and kind of what the Titans' game plan is.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And honestly, I don't see any way that the Titans contain the Steelers' offense. But let's go ahead right now and address the elephant in the room. Taylor Lewan out for season. And that is a huge, huge blow
By
to
the
the
way,
offense.
right quick, want to jump in on that. We wish him a speedy recovery. We know that he's going to come back bigger and better next year. I mean, and his season got cut short, but he was able to meet some of the goals that he was going for. I don't believe he allowed any sacks this year, and he did not have any penalties this year. And, after last year, he said that one of the main things is he did not want to have any penalties called against him this year that would, cost our team. And it's unfortunate that his season ended like it did, but he was able to keep his word in the time that he did play.
So shout out to Tether Lewan. So I definitely agree. I think he is going to come back next year stronger than ever, and I hate to see that happen to him. And I just hope, like you said, that he can have a speedy recovery, because I do hate to see that happen to him, especially when this team is playing so good this year. But there's still games to be played, and it looks like Ty Sombralo is going to be taking his place, and that is the elephant in the room.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. Uh, he's done all right for us. I mean, I'm going to leave it right there, kind of in the middle ground. He's done all right. He's been really good run blocking for us when he's had to come in for Lewan. But his pass protection is what worries me. We seen last week the first snap that he come in on. The Texans took advantage of it. They moved J.J. Watt over to that side, and he was 1-on-1 with him. And J.J. Watt beat him, got the strip sack on Tannehill, and then we seen him, instead of just falling on the ball, try and pick it up and run with it. And it ended up being a turnover for us. And he hasn't done bad. Like I said, he hasn't done bad in pass protection for us, but he does have a little bit of trouble in the one-on-one situations against some of the bigger name pass rushers. I believe he come in to the game when we played the Vikings, and he had to face Ngakwe, or however you say his last name. And I don't know that he gave up any sacks that game, but he had his hands full, and he's going to have his hands full this week against the Steelers, who's their front four are just really, really good, especially T.J. Watt and Bud Dupree coming off the edge. I mean, him and Dennis Kelly both are going to have their hands full, keeping those guys away from Tannehill.
I agree. I think that, today I read an article, Will Lomas from Titan Sized. He made a great point in that article about Sombralo. According to the article, the Titans their offense has scored more points per drive with Sombralo at left tackle than with Lewan. 3.375 points per drive with Lewan versus 3.429 per drive with Sombralo. Now, by no means am I saying that Sombralo is a better option than Lewan, and we all know that. I think there's absolutely no one that would go against that point. Lewan is obviously better. He's a Pro Bowler, but in pass protection, in my opinion, there's definitely a noticeable difference. It seems like pass rushers are able to get to Tannehill so much more quickly with Sombralo there than with Lewan. But in the run game, I think that's where he makes up for it. And I think that, probably a lot of – I haven't exactly went back and checked this, but I would say probably a lot of Derrick Henry's touchdowns came when Sombralo was in. And I'm not saying he's a better run blocker than Lewan, but I'm saying maybe that is why you get that stat where the Titans are scoring more points per drive, because they're relying more on the run when he's in there. because of the fact that he's not as effective in pass protection.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like you said, they may be committing a little bit more to the run in those situations. But that being said, you look at the last drive that the Titans had in regulation against the Texans, they weren't running the ball that drive. Tannehill was standing back in shotgun, throwing the ball. I mean, because we had to get down the field and score to tie that game up. And, they done a really good job of keeping Tannehill upright that drive. So, I think when it comes down to it, he can step up and do what we need him to do. And, I mean, there's a lot of linemen in the league that, when put up against this pass rush that the Steelers have, I mean, they have a hard time with it. I believe the Steelers lead the league in sacks this year. And just looking at some of their stats, the two main guys I mentioned, Bud Dupree and TJ Watt, Dupree has 5 sacks and TJ Watt has 4.5 sacks. But the reason they're able to do that is, they can just lay their ears back and go after the quarterback because they have the number 2 ranked rush defense in the league right now. They've only had one game where a team has went over 100 yards rushing on them, and that was when they played Denver.
That's going to change this week.
As far as a single running back going against them, the most yards that they've allowed to one single running back was 80 yards to Miles Sanders.
It's going to change this
when
week.
I think it will too. But, that's the thing that's really helped them. And especially you look at the game against the Browns, they were up 21-0 on the Browns before the Browns knew what had even happened. And, the Browns had the number 1 rush offense in the league at the time. But when you get down 21-0 before halftime, like, your mindset changes. You go away from running the ball and you start trying to throw the ball more. And that's what this Steelers defense wants. They want you to throw the ball because then, like I said, you have to deal with TJ Watt and Bud Dupree.
Right. I think that this week's definitely going to tell us a lot about the situation that we have there at left tackle because they have such a great defense and definitely such a great front seven. I think that if Seumalo is showing any weakness at all, it's going to be very apparent, and we'll be able to tell.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with that.
So I know that we do actually have a question to answer this week before we get into keys to the game, bold predictions, and the score prediction. So Tyler, go ahead, unload that question.
All right. Our question comes from Luke Jerkins, who, we've had on our YouTube channel. We're actually going to have to get him on the podcast part at some point to come in and talk about some of these game previews with us.
Right.
His question for us is, what is the more important matchup this week? As you mentioned, Devin Bush is out for the Steelers. He's their signal caller on the defense. He's really good in like the underneath pass coverage because he can, he's quick, so he can get sideline to sideline. And he's big in the run game. So he's out. So is it the Steelers inside linebackers versus Derrick Henry, or is the more important matchup A.J. Brown and Corey Davis versus Steven Nelson and Joe Hayden?
I'm going to say that it's the inside linebackers against Derrick Henry. I think that's going to be the most important matchup because you mentioned the Steelers have been so good against the run this season. And I feel like when two teams that are as good as these two are play against each other, the matter of who wins really comes down to, well, which team made the other team into something that they're not for that game. And so if the Titans can establish the run game against the Steelers, I feel like they'll have a really good chance to win because they'll be making the Steelers into a team that they're not. So far this season we've seen, as you mentioned, the Steelers have gotten up on teams and made them have to push the issue and throw the ball. And so if the Titans can find success with the run, then they're going to be making the Steelers into a team that they don't want to be.
You're right. And I've kind of went back and forth on this all day because I could see both sides of it. I mean, you can argue that the key matchup is going to be AJ Brown and Corey Davis versus their top corners because if we're not getting the run game going, then you know AJ and Corey are going to have to beat their guys off the line and get open quicker so that Tannehill can get the ball out of his hands quicker. But, the key part to that is if our run game isn't working, which is why I have to agree with you and say the key matchup is going to be Derrick Henry versus the Steelers inside linebackers. I think that the Titans need to make it a point to control the time of possession this game for sure. Keep the Steelers defense out on the field. Just keep wearing them down slowly because if you start getting in a shootout with them and letting these pass rushers stay, you know, what's the word I'm looking? You keep their energy up. Like if you let them keep their energy up and don't keep them out on the field, wearing them down,
being aggressive.
Right. If you allow them to keep being rested,
right,
then they're going to get after you more. But I think it's going to be Derrick Henry against those inside linebackers because the Titans need to keep feeding the beast. I mean, just keep pounding him, even if he has a game like he did against Denver, where he has 30 carries for 116 yards and is averaging under 4 yards a carry. You got to keep it up. Just keep pounding him because if you go away from it, like you said, it takes away from what your team does best. And I know Tannehill stepped up for us this year, but I just don't want those pass rushers coming after him, by us just going away from the run.
So, long story short, in the words of Tyler, keep pounding him. Luke, keep sending in the questions. I like them. And let's get to the keys to the game. Tyler, what have you got?
Key to the game, I'm going to have a couple of them.
I see you just kind of ignored my comment about you telling him to keep pounding him.
Just keep giving him the ball. How about that? The Titans cannot turn the ball over like they did against the Texans. We cannot have that happen. If we do that against the Steelers team, things could get out of hand very quickly. And my second key to the game is
two keys to the game.
Two keys to the game. Our defense is they're going to have to get after Big Ben and make him uncomfortable. We're not facing Josh Allen or Deshaun Watson this week. Those are two guys that when we got them to third and long, we let them get out of the pocket, extend the play, and hurt us on third and long. I mean, we done better on third and short than we did third and long. And I think we have a good chance of changing that this week against the Steelers because Big Ben is older and he doesn't, while he is still tough to take down just because of his size, he can't get out of the pocket like Allen and Deshaun Watson can. So our edge rush and just our pass rushers in general, I think are going to have a better chance of getting to him on these third and longs and getting the Steelers off the field.
You've been doubling down a lot on the keys to the game, the bold predictions. You're going to have to tone it down a little bit.
I just hope you got two bold predictions in your notes there.
Well, I mean, when we came up with this whole deal, we started with one, and I think you've honestly just been trying to double down every week to have a better chance at getting it right. I'm going to continue going on with one because I'm pretty spot on with mine most of the time. My key to the game.
You've gotten one right as
my
far as
key
bold
to the
predictions
game
go.
is that I've tried to count on the defense too many times with the keys to the game. And it's apparent that the Titans offense is just the driving force of this team. And so they can't let the Steelers' aggressive defense force them into making bad decisions. They're going to have to keep the turnovers low. To be more specific, one turnover or less this week for the Titans. That's going to be the key to the game.
Okay. Well, I mean, that was the very first key to the game I mentioned. And
right.
Yeah. We had talked about that before, and we knew that you can't
and
turn the
maybe if
ball
you
over
didn't have
against
15, you wouldn't steal mine all the time.
All right. Well, since you're only going to do one bold prediction, what is your bold prediction for this week?
I'm going to say that Derrick Henry is going to continue his success from last week, and he's going to have another 200-plus yard rushing game.
Wow. Okay. See, now you've really thrown me off because I didn't know that you would go so bold on your predictions. Like all of yours have been, a little bit like on edge on if they're actually on edge if they're actually a bold prediction or not.
Barely dip my prediction in the bold sauce.
Yeah, that's what you've been doing for the past 5 games, and then now you come out with this. I can respect it. I like seeing you actually go bold with a bold prediction. My bold prediction is going to be that the Titans finish this game with more sacks than the Steelers. The Titans defense will have more sacks than the Steelers defense.
That's bold because we can't sack anybody.
Ever. That's why I'm going with it. I think we're going to come out and surprise some people this week because the Steelers are at the top of the league in sacks, and we're down, I think, in the bottom 5 of the league. So, but I think since Big Ben isn't able to get out of the pocket as much and extend plays, that we're fixing to have a field day with our pass rushers.
And if DeCastro misses the game, Big Jeff is going to be back there all the time in the backfield. He's going to be living back there.
I think Big Jeff's going to be leading the charge for us.
And so now, last but not least, the score prediction. I'll let you go first on this one. And if you want to put out 2 or 3 of them, then go ahead.
I see what you're doing there. I mean, I could just do what I always do and go back to what we said before.
Right.
But I think I'm actually going to shy away from that this week because so far, I don't think we've even been close.
Things have not played out the way that we expected them to, and they never really do. So.
I'm going to go with the Titans 31, the Steelers 27.
All right. We've got the same margin between the Titans and the Steelers there because I've got the Titans 27, Steelers 23. So we're both going with a 4-point win for the Titans, which from what I saw earlier today, now obviously I know these things change all the time, but according to the score as of 1:09 p.m. on Thursday, the Titans were favored by 1 point. So we both got them winning by 4. Obviously, I know those spreads and everything change all the time, but I always think it's interesting to kind of weigh my prediction against the spread.
How does that make you feel for us to be favored in this game, though?
Well, I don't like it.
Like being the underdog?
Yeah, I do.
I'm the same way. We've talked about this before. It's nice to an extent to finally be getting this national media attention or be mentioned as one of the top teams. Seen where Stephen A. Smith actually ranked us number one in the league right now,
Right.
like
I mean,
power rankings.
is that where you have us as well?
I think so. Uh, Step up this year, winning the games basically from our offense. I mean, Ryan Tannehill has led 4 game-winning drives in 5 games. So he leads the league in that right now. So we're having to rely on our offense a lot. So if our defense could step up and be middle of the pack and our offense keeps chugging along like they have been, I don't see any team that can beat us right now.
No, I don't either. But I mean, to the point of being an underdog that we were talking about just a second ago, I like that personally because, I mean, it's not often that you see a team going, not losing a game throughout the whole course of the season. It's only happened just a couple of times, and so, I mean, in the back of your mind it's going to come at some point, and so it's just being the underdog lets you, when that point finally comes, be like, well, we weren't supposed to win that game anyways. But
Well, not just that, but being the underdog gives you that extra
chip on your
push.
shoulder.
And right. And when you're not the underdog, I've been thinking about this today. It's kind of like I know we both watched The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, and they talked about in there how, obviously I think he's the greatest of all time. You've kind of went back and forth on who you think the greatest is. We're not really going to dive into that right now, but he would, in his own mind, kind of manufacture some things to give him that extra drive. There's all these memes out there about how, this guy said hi to me. I took that personally. Like that's what the Titans are having to do right now, since they're getting this national attention, is they're not being looked at as the underdogs as much. So we're having to find something that drives us, and we took that personally. And right now, the whole the past couple of weeks, the whole NFL has been coming at us, and because of the COVID situation. And you know what? Yeah, we took that personally, and now we're showing teams like it's going to be the Titans versus everybody, and you're not going to like this Titans team that you face, because we're not going to give up, and we're going to come out and beat you.
And almost it can be like, if you don't find that extra, I guess, motivation, or that if it's almost to a point where nobody's doubting you and nobody thinks that there's any chance that you can lose, then when you get to the game, it's almost like you're literally just playing to not be beat. Like, it's not like you're playing to win, you're playing literally to not lose, and you just can't win a game that way.
Right. And you could end up, if you let that attention go to your head, it can be catastrophic for
It
your
can
team,
be
because
like the Ravens in the divisional round of the playoffs, where
exactly.
they kind of overlooked the Titans, and I know that John Harbaugh, he tried to dispel that, say it wasn't true, but I really do think they kind of overlooked the Titans a little bit.
Oh, they did. They were looking on to the next week, and we come out and punched them in the mouth, and ended things for them. So that's why it's important. I think that yeah, I don't want to necessarily say it's a blessing in disguise with how the COVID stuff happened, because obviously, so many things could have went wrong with our guys getting that disease, and not even just from the aspect of like the NFL season being canceled, but their health and their family's health. Like, there's so many things that could have gone wrong in that. But then
at the same time, it's like, hold on, you want us to forfeit?
Right. Like it's one of those things where everyone,
like, okay,
everyone come at us, and you're
what was
talking
it,
about
42 to whatever,
16
to the 42-16 to the Bills,
and
you want us to forfeit?
Yeah. I mean, you gave us that extra motivation. You gave
Right.
us something that we could look at and be like, okay, yeah, we can feed off that for, the rest of the season. So, and even now, the Steelers, how there's a lot of Steelers fans out there that aren't happy that this game got pushed back and that they had to take their bye week in week 4. So, they're wanting the Steelers to come in and beat us down, but hey, it didn't work for the Bills. And while the Steelers, I think, are a better team than the Bills, I don't think it's going to work out in their favor either.
You heard it here first. That's all we've got for this week's episode. Make sure that you check us out on Twitter at Titans_time. Check out our Instagram, Titans Time Podcast, our YouTube, also Titans Time Podcast, and check out our website, TitansTimePodcast.com.
Guys, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Leave us that 5-star rating. Leave us some comments and some questions. We're always checking that. We answered a question on this week's episode, and we'll be glad to answer your questions if you have any for us.
Luke, keep them coming.
Yeah, keep them coming, Luke. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on the post notifications, leave us some comments, like the video, share the video.
Maybe next week we'll be not on Zoom, and that'll smooth out a lot of our audio issues. But this has been Titans Time, and as always, tighten up.